What's going on, moms and dads? Welcome to the Fade You podcast. This is episode 140 coming to you on Tuesday, August 16th, 2022. We brought a friend with us today on today's episode to talk some football with us. But first, make sure you're following us everywhere on Twitter at Fade You Sports. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. That link can be found on the Twitter page. And then the TikTok is at Fade University. Make sure you go back and listen to the start of our NFL preview series. We've recorded 3 division previews so far. We hope you guys are enjoying our division by division look at this upcoming season's NFL landscape, having a lot of fun with that. All that content is available in both podcast and video format. You can find all our links in that pinned tweet on Twitter, which again is at Fade You Sports. My name is Matthew James on Twitter at MatthewJames78, joined as always by Chris Duke. He is at HazmatSuit23 on the Twitter. And joining us today is one of our favorites. You know him from Wager Talk. He is on The Hustle, which I believe returns next week.
Yeah, Wednesday night, 1 week from tomorrow. So yeah, Wednesday the 24th, 6 p.m.
There we go. He is the pride of Siena College. Go Saints. He bets poop just like my smelly friend Chris Duke. He is Adam Trigger on Twitter at TopFlightSI. Adam, thanks for hanging out with us and talking some football.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It's we're getting close. I mean, really, we've already started, right? Like we're a week into preseason, and I view preseason week 1 as like the start of the NFL season, at least for me, because I'm betting the preseason the same. Like we do our plays at Wager Talk on a 4%, 5%. I never do anything other than 4 and 5% because I'm a big proponent of flat betting, or as close to flat betting as possible. And so a 4% play in the preseason for me is no different than a 4% play in week 17. Same thing. So football, as far as I'm concerned, has already started for the NFL, and then of course we have college football. I was looking, finally started to get into the actual matchups. It looks like a pretty full week. What are we still calling it week 0? Is that still a thing? Week 0? It's weird. I don't know. But yeah, maybe 10, 11 games, right? So looking forward to it. That's we're about 10 days away. So should be a good time.
Very, very exciting time of year. So let's hit NFL first. So I know you talked preseason and preseason betting. I mean, you watch those numbers move. They can actually move quite a bit. And then, we're going to get into the season here in just a few short weeks. Your prep right now for the season, just general prep, what are you specifically looking for? What are you studying about teams as we get, like you said, closer and closer to week 1 kickoff?
Yeah, so as far as NFL is concerned, I haven't done as much. So I'll just start with this. I don't fire season win total bets in football like I would, let's say in baseball. And the reason is, guys, it's just there's too much variance that can happen in a 16-game schedule. And that's just for me. I'm not saying they're bad bets. I actually have one that I really like that I'll give out on the show, and I don't think I've given it out anywhere yet. So this will be the first time I talk about it. But I just am not going to tie all sorts of money up on season win totals in football, because you're talking a 17-game season now for NFL. You lose a guy for 4 to 6 weeks, and that's a massive part of your season. I'll do it in baseball because I think I'm going to get, the variance is going to sort of stretch out over the course of 162 games. And a guy misses 3 weeks in a Major League Baseball season, it's a little blip, right? Over the course of a 6-month season. But the NFL, college football, couple injuries, and that really can really skew the bet. So for NFL, I come in, I just start grinding right away with preseason games, trying to win bets, because that's what we're trying to do. And then college football, I read all the guides, right? And we can talk about that in a minute, but I just start doing my reading, and I don't really take a ton of notes though. If something really pops out, I'll jot it down, but I'm mostly just trying to read. I let the people that really know how to do the prep stuff, the Kenny Whites, Phil Steele, I'm reading his stuff. Kel just she just tweeted about Mark Lawrence. He's great as well. they spend all year on this stuff, right? I'm a baseball bettor. So over the summer, like I'm immersed in baseball. I'm going to really let them do the quote unquote prep in terms of power rate all the teams, put all of the moving pieces on paper, and then I'm just going to try to take that and figure out how to make money with it against the number, which is, I mean, that's really the end game right there, is just cashing tickets. So that's kind of in a nutshell how I approach the football season.
Yeah, it's a really good point in that, so much of this is just information collecting and then making a decision for yourself and critically thinking, okay, do I agree with this part of what this guy's saying and this part of what this guy's saying? And how can I put that together and make an informed decision myself? And with football, it's probably the sport with the most information out there. So if you're someone who can find those resources, couple that with if you've got a good mind and your own feelings, you can really find a nice little avenue there. But it's kind of a catch-22 because NFL content is such an oversaturated market. How do you determine what's good and what's not good?
No, that's a great question, and it's only going to get more saturated, right? Because I mean, you guys remember, it's funny to me that like a lot of people think sports betting started in like 2018, right? And like we've been all been doing this since high school, like like illegally or whatever you want to call it, but like it's right. It's just information overload at this point, and you can't sit there and read every 365 page magazine to prepare for the season, especially if you're someone that's like myself. I bet Korean baseball, Major League Baseball. So I need to really be able to like pick and choose, and that's why I just try to read in my free time and just like by osmosis pick up as much as I can, because I know that everything in any preseason guide or magazine is just, it's going to be like, nothing on there is probably going to put me on a bet specifically come like week 1 or week 2. And the reason I say that is, for me, it's going to be like completely reacting off what the market does. And that's like I think you guys are in the same boat with that a little bit. Like I need to have a pulse on what everyone else is doing before I can really start firing my bets, because and football, guys, is in my opinion, this is more so in football than anything. The biggest edge and the most value you're going to find is betting against overreactions from the masses. And so if we don't know what the masses are doing, nothing is really, you can't really do anything until you know how that's gonna play out. So I just try to get prepared in terms of, knowing I'll have a couple teams that I know that will be a fade for me, a couple teams that I would potentially play on, and I'll just kind of go from there. And I'll go each week trying to do that. I'm not a make your own numbers guy in football. And that's something Kelly taught me a few years ago that I think was like one of the most valuable things I learned, especially as someone that handicaps another sport all summer, because I'm obviously doing baseball every single day. She said, she came out and was like, I don't make my own numbers for this stuff. I've got a million other things to do. How am I going to make numbers that are better than John Murray's numbers at the Westgate, right? Like so if you're spinning your wheels 40, 50 hours a week, like it's still going to be hard to beat the books in terms of the number. But what you can do is beat all the people that aren't as prepared as you, right? Or what we call the betting public, the general public, who looks at something and it's like, well, this team's better than this team, so this is the bet. And then the line moves 1 point. And then it's like, well, that's where you can get your quote unquote value right there and potentially have an edge, is by knowing what games are shaded and, stepping in and being willing to take the other side. You can't do it in every game, but if you pick your spots, that in my opinion, that's how you make money betting football.
Yeah, it's funny, Matt. We talked about, I'm sure we'll get into what, Adams, you mentioned we're going to ask him his fades and teams he likes and then his teams he wants to fade. But it's funny, you and I, one of our favorite weeks of the year is week 2. We go, oh, perfect, overreaction week, right? What did everyone see last week? And Just like if we see the Lions, just beat up on the Eagles, right? Everyone thinks, oh, maybe the Lions are live dogs, and then everyone wants to get all high on them, and or they see the Chiefs just dismantle the Cards in week 1. Everyone just writes the Cards off, right? Ooh, they shouldn't have spent all that money on Murray. So yeah, we love that, and then it's a great pulse. You love to just almost sit back. We're degenerates. We're gonna put some plays in week 1, but you love to just sit back, see how it plays out, and just work the market week 2 and going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I'll definitely have week 1 bets because we're not just going to take. You only get 17 weeks of an NFL season, so we're not going to sit one out. But yeah, like week 2, week 3, and even into the October, where a lot of times, guys, you see a team start 1-3, and they're a couple of bounces away from being like 4-0 or 3-1. And there's always great opportunity to play against that type of overreaction in the football schedule. It's been a formula I've used for years now. It's been years since I can't remember the last time I had a losing football season, to be honest. And it's really that sort of that's sort of how I attack it. And then I just try to be selective. And I'm a big proponent of I want to make a lot of people look for what am I going to bet? I try to say, how can I talk myself off of this bet? And that's how I've always looked at it. And, it helps me thin it out. Because really, every time you make a bet, guys, you're giving someone minus 110 against you, right? Like, it's in the grand scheme of things. So less is always more in sports betting. I'm a big proponent of that. And, picking our spots, especially with some of those shit teams that, no one wants to bet. That's
yeah.
Yeah.
The poo, when are you going to step in poo? Are you going to avoid last year? I know we mentioned this on a pod last year. You really didn't take too many totals at all. Are you going to kind of shy away from that again, especially with this new, we've seen 15 illegal contact calls in week 1. Are you going to kind of look at totals being maybe that these refs are going to call and give them free first downs, extend these plays, these drives, or are you going to still more look towards sides throughout the season?
I'll absolutely look more towards sides. I've gone. I really don't play a ton of totals. The only sport I have ever really been a big totals player in has been baseball. Unfortunately, Major League Baseball ruined that for me a couple of years ago with the Ghost Runner. Because obviously, listen, guys, it's really hard to play totals now in Major League Baseball because typically it's always been like unders have been kind of sharp. It's you want to find good spots for unders, and now it's like you can't play a full game under in Major League Baseball because you just don't know. You could get to the end of the game, it's 2-2, and all of a sudden in extra innings it's 6-5. So I've shied away from totals Major League Baseball this season, which has been fine for me. I'm having a great Major League Baseball season, so I really can't complain there. I don't see myself playing a ton of totals in football. Obviously, if there's a good spot, I'll do it. But the reason is it's just it seems like it's become more of an offensive game. And so it's like, but then every time you go to take an over, it feels like you're taking like a premium. You have to lay a premium number to bet the over. So it becomes really difficult to find good spots to play totals because it's like you were saying in the NFL, a lot of times, you'll be sitting there. It's like, well, my numbers say, or like theoretically, I know 55.5 is too many, but then it's a 34-31 game and you like never had a shot. So I don't know. I'd rather, if I'm trying to be selective as it is, I'd rather put my money somewhere else in most scenarios. Usually on a side is how I look to it.
Yeah.
So like you said, the NFL season is relatively short. We only have 17 weeks of this. Let's say you're taking a position on a team going into the season, and I'm going to look to back this team. How much do you need to see before you start to adjust or rethink your feelings on certainty? I mean, is the quarter point in the season a good time to reevaluate? Can you give them more leash than that? What do you think?
I mean, I think you got to pretty much reevaluate on a week-to-week basis. But, like, for example, I'll give you an example. I like the Giants this year. I think the Giants are going to I think they could way overachieve That's the one season win total I've bet so far in the NFL. I took Giants over 7 wins. I think their home games are really winnable this year, and I think that's you look at, first of all, they have very winnable home schedule, and then I look at the division, and I don't think they're going to be out of it in any divisional game. Right? You have the Commanders, the Eagles, and Cowboys, and even in years it seems like where the Cowboys are good, Cowboys Giants is always a game. So that's a team that I plan to come out firing with. And like you guys said, if they go 0-2 and fail to cover the spread both times, am I gonna I'll probably be on them in week 3. So I personally, it probably takes me longer to get off a team than others. Like I'll go die on the hill if I have to. Like I do it in baseball sometimes, where I'll have Reds +1.5 back-to-back nights it loses, and I'm just like, all right, we got to see it out. Here we're gonna go back to the well one more time. So that's just me personally. I tend to trust my read, and think that there will be regression toward the mean, because all of this stuff tends to come back to the mean at some point. That's why betting on overreactions tends to be profitable, right? Because theoretically, unless it's like this past year in college basketball where every favorite just wins and covers any number you throw out there, it usually comes back, right? So it's like a team fails to cover the first 2 weeks, but you see they had some redeeming qualities. No, you go with them in week 3 because they're probably undervalued. I still think that's how I'll always approach it. And so yeah, if the Giants come out, I'm just using them as an example, and they suck the first 3 weeks, I'll still be trying to back them in week 4 unless I can make a good enough case to get off, or the equalizer there would be injuries. A couple big injuries can change everything, and that's really why I don't love the win totals, because as you guys know, like football, it just seems like no one's safe anymore, and anyone can go down at any time, and it makes it really difficult to make some of these full season bets. So I'm much more of a week to week better, really, because of that.
You two really are made for each other. There's few people I've ever met more stubborn than Chris. But you're giving him a run for his money. You two stubborn fucks. You just, like you say, I'll die on the hill. I'll keep going. Yeah. And Chris is the exact same way.
Keep hammering the under. Keep the dogs. No, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, I think one team that stands out from last year was the Colts. I think the Colts had a really bad start, and it might have been 0-3 start, but they played the Rams. I think they only lost to the Rams by 3 at home. And next thing you know, they're they should have they blew the big lead at the Ravens, but they covered, and then they go to the rain in San Francisco and win outright, and they just won 6 or 7 in a row. But if you just look at it, and everyone's like, oh, these Colts, they suck. They're not. Look at their record, 0-3, 0-4, and next thing you know, they get right back in it. And so, yeah, you just really got to pay attention, like you said, redeeming quality. What do they do well? Don't pay attention to the final score, and find that value in the weeks, in the middle of the season.
Yeah, and it's the interesting thing too. I was just thinking back, because it's hard. Like a year, a lot happens in a year, right? And I had to think back to last year, and I'm like, man, especially with college football, we were going into the season last year, and COVID was still really a thing. It seems like so long ago that COVID was completely impacting games, but really you go back to the beginning of the 2021 season and you still had to worry about teams missing numerous players. So now it feels like we're getting more back to what we've known. I found college football to be far more difficult the last couple of years, and I think it's because of the unknowns due to COVID. I also think that had a little bit of an impact on college basketball as well. I think the college sports specifically were made more difficult because of the COVID implications, whereas professional sports, it's they kind of had figured out their protocols and were able to get back to normal quicker. So I'm hoping that this college football season is, I had a decent college football season last year. I think I did better in the NFL. I actually think I posted, it's probably right on my Wager Talk homepage, exactly what I did. I was pretty happy with football last year, but I think 2020, I had a losing college football season. And I really COVID really just made everything crazy. So I'm just hoping that this is more like back, completely back to normal. And when I say normal, I just mean like, being able to go into the week and not having to just having to anticipate injury news and not like 6 dudes getting COVID and now all of a sudden Purdue has no receivers, but I already bet them. Like, like stuff like that was just, you just got on the wrong side of that and you were screwed in a lot of cases. So, but yeah, I kind of went off on a tangent there, but it was just funny to think about, like, that was only a year ago. And it was like,
yeah, eliminating that variable. I mean, there's enough variables in football, right? So just get rid of that one. And like you said, we can have a lot to look forward to in terms of normalcy or something resembling normalcy. What about, you mentioned, watching the market moves and finding the value there. Are there other certain spots that you really look for that kind of are right in your wheelhouse? Things like primetime games or short week games or off a blowout loss. Like, are there certain angles that you kind of like especially look out for?
yeah, so I'll give you one that I like that I think doesn't really get enough attention, and it tends to lead me to, I would say, more winners than losers. So I'm a real proponent. I just like to follow sharp. When I say follow sharp action, I don't mean follow it like bet it, right? Like, I like to be on the sharp side. I mean, that is my goal, is to make bets that line up with the quote unquote sharp side. But what I mean by follow that action is I like to know what was quote unquote sharp on a certain week, and then I'll track how it did, and then I'll look to come back with those teams the following week, because it kind of goes to your point. It's like, okay, this might have, like, Army might be like a sharp side, might have moved a couple points. It was there was some winning bettors somewhere thought that it was a good idea to bet on. I'm just using Army as an example. It could be anyone, and that team goes out and gets rolled 35-6. I'll make a note of that, and then I'll try to find any way possible to come back the following week with Army. Why? Because a week ago there were smart people, and when I say sharp, the definition of sharp, in my opinion, I guess it really means two things. It means either, one, you're beating the market consistently, or two, you win. I like definition 2 better. Because, like, guys, I don't give a shit about CLV, and I know there's going to be people that hate that. It's like, listen, I get it, like, that's great. Beating the market's great, but I really only care about, like, winning, like cashing a ticket. I beating them, like, and theoretically, if you're beating the market consistently, you should win, but really it's like it's wins and losses, and so. Like, that's what, like, so if I know that Army was sharp 1 week ago and they got blown out, well, that's a great team. Like, I'll have a nice big circle on that team going into the following week, because I'll think, okay, like, there was some redeeming quality here, but they didn't execute. So is the redeeming quality still there? And now are they even more undervalued against maybe a more manageable opponent? If so, bet. If not, pass. But maybe, but keep a note in mind, because it might come, two weeks come down the road, and now all of a sudden they had a nice win, and it's like, okay, this is maybe what the reason that the sharper people were on this team, and I might be able to find a good spot to bet them down the road. So that's the kind of stuff I'm really looking for, far more, like, more so than like wins, losses, or this team beat that team, or this team won by X. That's kind of the stuff I look for, and then I try to just, like, if I can make a case for it and it fits that, and then of course, guys, if it's like, if everyone and their mom is on the other side, we love to see that, of course.
Right.
Then it's usually a bet for me. That's, and I kind of try to go from there.
Yeah, that's a good point. And how many times? I mean, that's a good point about, like, sports across the table. We talk about just football by itself, or we could talk about basketball or whatever. But when you look at every sport, whether it's baseball, football, you can have that team that is quote unquote sharp that night, and maybe even the public is too. So we get afraid that one of the things we hate the most is a trendy dog or something like that. So the sharp and the public are on it, and then they lose that one, and then you're like, ooh, and then everyone jumps off them again, overreaction, jumps off them the next week, and that's when you kind of have to go, hey, maybe this is now the time to jump on them. And we see it in baseball all the time, whether it's a scum baseball team or basketball. Everyone's like, oh, the Spurs are sharp tonight, and then they get blown out by 20, and everyone's like, well, I'm not touching them. They suck.
Right.
They're catching 5 the next night and win outright, and you're like, damn it, I was a day late. So, yeah,
it happens all the time. Like I'll give you guys an example from Major League Baseball this season. The Chicago White Sox took more sharp money prior to the season to win the AL Central, to win the AL pennant, and to win the World Series. And I started talking about this on shows like early July. They were probably like 4 or 5 games under 500. And I was like, it's not that I wasn't betting the White Sox every night. I still haven't been betting the White Sox every night, but I'm certainly not looking to bet against them because I'm like, okay, so they're still were perceived to be this, and they're 5 games under 500. So if anything, I want to bet on them and try to catch the uptick, and that's kind of what happened, right? They went like 5-1 before the All-Star break, and now I think they're 4 games over 500. So, that's a baseball example, but it really is all we're doing is just using an example that can be applied really to almost anything, and it doesn't really, you have to dig a little bit and maybe rely on your kind of network to determine what's actually sharp, right? But I do think that information's out there. I don't think you have to be overly connected, if you will, to kind of determine what sharp sides are, and then it's really just a matter of keeping track of that and trying to find spots where they've become, I guess, totally undervalued. That's a big part of the game for me, at least.
That's what I was going to follow up with is I guess we could backtrack, for people who are trying to become better bettors, or maybe they're a newer bettor in the market, and they hear like Chris in our group text, how many times throughout the week are we saying, oh, who are the sharps on? Oh, the sharps are on this team. How does someone who's newer or trying to improve identify who the sharps are on? Is it watching the lines and seeing how they move? Is it ticket count versus money percentage? How would you recommend for someone who's trying to improve and how do I figure out who the sharps are on?
Yeah, so I mean, you definitely need to get yourself an odds screen. There's, Wager Talk puts one out for free. There's other good ones that are, I'm not gonna. Everyone has their preference, but that certainly ticket count against money is gonna help because you're gonna be able to sort of see the moves in real time. The other thing is really just there's many ways to gain info out there, and everyone is not going to have the same access to everything, but the reality is that information is out there, and if you dig enough, you're going to find it. Also, another thing Kelly taught me that was super valuable that I learned from her is just you want to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, and I feel like even it's doable, and just I love to network even on Twitter. Like even, before anyone knew who I was happy to just, DM with people, and I've met a lot of very smart people that way. And I still do. So it's like the info's out there. You just gotta, it's really attrition more than anything, guys. You just gotta dig and eventually you'll find it. And you'll figure out, okay, I respect this. That's another thing too. It's not just, it's also you want opinions that you respect, and all you're doing is really triaging info, right? Like you're just trying to take all this information, and it's kind of like studying for a test, right? It's like you spend all in college, whatever. You're just trying to you don't know the answers to the test. You're just trying to take notes and write all the information down and hope that you can put together the right answers. So that's really the most of the battle is that. And then just trying to not, the more that you do this, the easier you'll be able to identify the easy traps to avoid, or the pitfalls of the, like, the mistakes that you used to make, when you just started, that you maybe don't make anymore. And that probably comes with just like time and doing this over and over and over again for a long period of time.
Chris, we talk about that all the time on our pods. The mistakes we used to make as bettors, that you just, like Adam literally just said, you kind of learn what those traps are, and then you don't make those mistakes again. Like your boy who's firing, he had the Yankees in the parlay yesterday, right? And he's going to get it all back with the Doys today, and it's not that easy. And that's just stuff you learn the more you bet.
Yeah, 100%. It takes time. Everyone thinks I'm just going to be good from day one, and not the case. It takes a long time and a lot. It's awesome. You might think, I love the what Adam said about surrounding your people with people that are smarter and have good info, because you might think, oh, this is a sharp side, and then you go talk to someone and you're like, actually, we're getting a lot of action on that side, you think, and maybe this is a contrarian play, and you want to, the money's coming in on this side. So that's why you always want to have your ears open, and your, like he said, DMs, and talk to people, ask them questions, and find out, stuff. Because football too is like the most bet on sport. That's the one way you can kind of get, find out what's going on. You got your morning games, your afternoon, the Sunday night prime time, the Monday night. So a lot of opportunities to find sharp angles.
Yeah, and also, like, I had to. This is something I learned with time too. Recognize that, like, you can get off, like, you don't have to be married to, like, your opinion, right? Like, so for example, and this happens to me, like, I'll go into the week, and football is a great for this, because we have early in the week to sort of formulate opinions, but you don't really have to bet like on Monday or Tuesday. I would say, I probably personally start betting games on like Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday I'll really start, like, having my college card finalized, and then I do that Saturday for the NFL, because obviously, you kind of got to get some bets down, or everything's gonna move off of playable numbers. But, like, I might have, I, like, for example, Chris Thurston, he'll, one of you guys bet him a bunch, and he's one of my buddies, like, but, like, I've watched him get cut off of books betting football. So, like, I know he knows what he's doing. So if he likes the other side, I need to go, and I'm just using this as an example, and if there's other people like this, but, like, I'm going to go, you know what? Do I really want to bet against this guy who I know is a winning bettor? Or do I want to find one of the other 150, 100 games on the board and put my money there? And that's the thing. You don't need to bet every game. Less is more. So if you can find a way to talk yourself off and just be like, yeah, you know what? I have an opinion here, but I'm going to have to leave it, because, like, this is going to get me off of that. And then it's just like, you will net a better profit, or your net will be far better, I think, if you can do that. And it's like, but that, again, I feel like you need to get beat down a little bit in your primitive betting years, if you will, to, like, be able to do that. I know I did. At least I had to get beat up in my, like, early 20s to, like, really figure out how to do this. And I guarantee you, if you check in with anyone that, like, does this for a living, they have the exact same story. No, I guarantee you will not find one person that actually makes money doing this professionally and says, "Oh yeah, I've just been winning forever." It won't happen.
If they say otherwise, they're probably lying. I mean, we all thought laying 380 on a tennis match would be a good idea because it's free money, right? And then we've lost we all have those mistakes, and you're absolutely right. You have to take your licks, and then you just learn a little bit more the more you do it. So let's talk about ride teams, fade teams. You mentioned the Giants earlier, a team you're high on. Is that because of the coaching change? Is that because they've just been down for so long? Is it a little bit of both?
Yeah, a little bit of both. I like the coaching change, but it's more so, it's really a combination of both. They've been, so you just know that you're going to get this team is because they're in a funny market where it's like, when they're bad, it seems like the masses, like, want to pile on them a little bit, and they'll get faded into the ground, right? Like, when they're really bad. Because Giants, for whatever reason, like Giants games are like all seem to be high profile games. I think it's just the big New York market. It's probably similar with like LA teams, really. Like it's like they're all every Giants game's like a big game, even when they're like 4-8. So I think it's just because they've been bad for so long, have the coaching change, and then I like the schedule. I think the schedule shapes up nicely for them. So yeah, I think they're a way undervalued team, and they'll be definitely be a team I'm looking to back. You know, until I guess until the market catches up. That's the other thing. No, nothing is sort of ever like final, right? Because if 3 weeks go by and the Giants go 3-0 and they blow each team out by double digits, I'll probably be looking to bet against them sooner than later. So it's just everything is relative to what happens. And but yeah, if you go in like the Giants are a team, I'm definitely going to look to sort of play on in the early going.
Any fade teams? Any team you're like, I don't know. Like, I'm gonna look to maybe bet against these guys early on.
Um, you know, I've read a lot about like the Bears being like a complete disaster. I don't know how much I agree with that at this point, but it seems there's some smart people that have kind of said that the Bears could be a total mess. So that was one that sort of you know caught my eye there. I know, and this is couple sharp people that I respect really like the Tennessee Volunteers in college football. So that was something I did bet, but that wasn't mine. Like but I did end
Deep
up betting
bets
that.
like that one, right?
Yeah. I did end up betting that. I think we got like 7.5, and I agree with it. I've been more doing my college football prep this week in preparation for our first episode of The Hustle, and I did
Big
agree with
break.
that one.
How about this fade? How about this? I've got my sick ass Fresno State hat on. They play USC week 3. How do you feel about fading Lincoln Riley and in USC under 9.5? Do you think they can keep it
I
under?
mean, you're certainly not going to see me bet that over. Like, you know, anytime I can find a big name team to fade, which has been harder in college football in the past couple of years. Because it feels like the big names end up getting there regardless. I'll look to do that. But yeah, I haven't. I try not to like, and that's another reason I don't love the win totals. I don't want to put myself into a situation where I'm like reluctant to bet on or against a team because I have like a season long bet. So that's another reason I don't do a ton of win totals. But yeah, I don't have as many like play on play against yet. It's still a little early for me. Probably by around the time we go with the hustle next week, I'll have more. So that's about 8 days from now. I think I'll have a lot more, especially in college football, since we'll have games that weekend. I'll have a lot more in terms of fade, play on, play against. And then the NFL, like I said, I'm totally immersed in betting preseason football. So I'm going to bet these 3 weeks and kind of wait for the fallout from the preseason before I like totally make form a bunch of strong opinions on NFL going forward. So like the Giants is really the only team I've sort of already in my head said, okay, like this is a team I'm going to be on for sure. Like I know that unless like they have a disastrous like wholesale injuries of any kind, I will be looking to back the Giants. But otherwise, we still have 2 weeks of preseason left. And then I feel like I'll have a far better idea of what I want to do there, getting to see, 2 weeks of game, teams playing games. And in preseason, it's like, oh, okay, well, the starters aren't going to play a ton. So how do you evaluate? But you can still evaluate the coaching staffs. There's still like, coaches really, especially in the NFL. I mean, we had like the running Anthony Lynn joke for all those years. Like, I do like to bet on and against certain coaches, and that's something you can kind of see in the preseason, in my opinion. So yeah, that's kind of how I go about it.
It's interesting you mentioned the Bears a minute ago. We recorded our NFC North preview yesterday. Do you think this fade the Hard Knocks team is a thing, or is that also I think there's a new episode tonight. We're recording this on a Tuesday. Everybody's going to get fired up about Dan Campbell again. It's going to be all over Twitter tonight.
So that's interesting this year. I went with the fade the Hard Knocks angle in week 1 of the preseason. Got very lucky in that game, guys, with Desmond Ritter. Desmond Ritter with the fall away touchdown pass to basically get that win. But you know what? I had the Colts last weekend too, so it all evened out because that was a game that looked like it was in the bag with about 7 minutes left and somehow finished the loser. So, but back to the problem is the Hard Knocks team is the Lions. So it's like maybe you want to fade them early because people have them overvalued because they watched the show and they like fell in love with Dan Campbell and stuff like that. But it's like, are the Lions really going to be like super overvalued? They've been horrible for years. So this one's a tricky one. It's not as cut and dry as some years past when you have a team that's like, pretty good, and then Hard Knocks portrays them as like elite. Like I mean, they've like this been done in years past, but I mean, I wouldn't be at all surprised if we get to week 1 and suddenly the Lions are taking all sorts of public money and they're a little bit overvalued. But are they a fade because of that? I'm not sure. Well, we'll have to see what the number is and what the splits are, but it certainly wouldn't surprise me. It makes a lot of sense that would happen. Let's put it that way.
Do you buy into the Super Bowl loser narrative, or is that totally case by case?
I think it's case by case. I mean, listen, the one thing I will say about that is it takes a lot to get to a Super Bowl, right? Like the climb to get there is it takes a lot, right? Like you need things to go your way. And then the number of big games that you have to win to get there are, it's hard to replicate that. So, and then you go into the following season and there's all sorts of expectations. A lot of times, not every year do you have a team like for example, I don't know, the Bengals, right? Like they didn't have expectations last year, but they certainly will now. And teams, it's a different ball game when you go from, being the undervalued underdog to, being expected to win. So it could be a thing, but definitely it's a case by case basis, in my opinion. Everything is a case by case basis for me, guys. I'm not a trend guy whatsoever. So you're never gonna hear me reference like, well, this since 1998, this is like 16-0. It's just not how I look at things. Everything's a case by case basis, and I'm always looking for, how can I fade something that's overvalued? That's like basically my whole jam right there. Doesn't really ever differ from that.
Yeah, that's good. You're right. They say trends don't pay the rent. Obviously, you'd have to have a freaking crystal ball and be able to just predict these trends that happen. I think, it'd be good. We talk about one of our favorite, lines at Fade You is just be malleable. We have a fade guy. We're like, dude, we kind of like this over. We kind of like this dog. And then he hops on it and we jump off it as quick as we can. Cause we're like, look, we can't be stuck and attached to our view and just think that's the winning side. We got to be able to flip flop and have, patience and stuff. And you could look and say, look, just because the Bengals made you a lot of money last year, and they did well, doesn't mean they're going to, and everyone's talking shit on who the hell's going to play quarterback for the Steelers. And look at the Deshaun Watson in Cleveland, and everyone thinks, so, what are we going to get out of the Ravens? Oh, maybe the Bengals are just going to waltz back into the playoffs. So yeah, you have to really be careful. And a lot of people might look at, what isn't the total only like 9.5? And the average Joe's probably looking like, are you telling me that the Bengals are going to come back with 10, 11 wins and think it's free money? Just be careful with all that,
Yeah, and it goes back to what I was saying at the top of the show too, especially with some of the season win totals. Like, man, you go back to just past seasons and just take like a random sample of teams from any NFL year back as long as you want to go, and I guarantee you'll have, out of that random sample, there will be teams that were supposed to be really good, had a couple key injuries, and ended up 4-12, right? Like it happens all the time, and that's why I try not to get so I try not to make a ton of like kind of statement type, you know, going into the season, because I don't want to be so like married to that opinion that I can't like justify going against it. So I'm really selective with the win totals. I think last year I remember I played Ole Miss over in college football last year, which hit.
Yeah.
I think I lost. I think I had well now they're the Commanders, but I think I was, if I remember correctly, I was all over that Washington team in the beginning headed into the season. I definitely lost money with preseason stuff with them. But like and that's a perfect example, right? Like I was so high on Washington going into the NFL season last year that I know I made bets on them because of that. And it's like, I guess it's a double-edged sword, but that's why I try not to lock in a bunch of stuff preseason, because I don't think you're getting, especially in like football, I don't think you're getting like a ton of. It's not like baseball where, you can find a number on a season win total, and you know it's like it's good value, and you know that you're going to have
All this
162 games for it to
time to
shake out.
ground
Yeah.
to make up. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like it's harder to do stuff in my opinion before the season in football, because man, it's guys a contact sport, right? Like big time contact sport, and you can really have injuries play a big part. And not the injuries. The other thing too, I want to sort of throw out there for football, the injuries you need to worry about are not the ones they really talk about. It's the team that lost two offensive linemen, or the team that's down a couple like key defensive players. Like the ones that get reported, the skill players are usually not the ones that are gonna like crush you. Um, and I think that's like a great tool for handicapping, right? Like I don't care about teams losing like receivers and running backs most of the time. And even in a lot of cases, I'll be willing to roll with a backup quarterback depending on who it is. But man, like if I see a team with like 2-3 offensive linemen out, I'm only gonna probably go against them. I don't think I would back that team. But they're not big name guys, so it doesn't always get talked about. So some value there typically.
The wide receivers. How'd the Titans do without Derrick Henry last year? Oh wait, they were the number 1 seed in the AFC. So don't overreact to the running back and the receiver injuries. It's a great point. So that's a great conversation with Adam. Hopefully you guys enjoyed listening to this. Listen to as many professional handicappers as possible. And like Adam talked about earlier, just soak it all up, listening to different styles, different ways people approach the sport. The more you can do that and the more you can learn, the better. Adam, let's get you out of here with this. We are going to be in Vegas together this weekend for SuperContest Weekend. Can't wait for that. Shout out Westgate. It's going to be a ton of fun. How is your golf game?
Not great, guys. But you know what? Like I think I told you off air, I'm good for like one real good shot every once in a while, and I'll follow it up with like 4 or 5 where you look and say, I don't think he's ever played this game before. But you know what? It's going to be a blast. Can't wait for it. And I think it's a scramble format. So if I hit, if I can come contribute 1 or 2 good shots every once in a while, I think I'll be happy with that. But yeah, looking forward to playing, hanging out with everyone. And yeah, if you're seeing this before Saturday, come down to the Westgate. We'll all be there on Saturday hanging out.
Yes. Hopefully your epic shots on that hole-in-one hole, you win a Jeep, and it's all worthwhile, right?
Yeah, that would be. I can guarantee you that won't happen. But if it does, it'd be pretty awesome. Yep.
And then last thing, Adam, get people hyped about the Hustle coming back next week. Plug that for a sec.
Oh yeah, no, we've got the Hustle season 2. It's the second year we're doing it. Myself, Kelly in Vegas, Kelly Stewart, Chris Thurston, Drew Martin Betts. We are back 1 week from tomorrow, and I will have far more college football thoughts than I have today. Since the next week or so, I'm really going to be sort of formulating my college football opinions, and really mostly like same thing though holds true, guys. Like I'll be really looking at the games coming up on the 27th. I try not to get way too far ahead of myself, because like the 27th, those games, that's where we're making money, right? Like and we'll like it's good to have a pulse on like what's coming up, but I try not to like concern myself with stuff going on in the middle of September because the landscape could just change so much that, I'd rather be, you want to be proactive, but you want to, you want to be able to, in my opinion, react to sort of like what's going on and not, otherwise I feel like like I was talking about last year with the Commanders, I got so sort of high and hopped up on them that I ended up betting them in a couple of spots where I had to go back and say, why did I do that? Right? Like, did I do that because I'm like so married to this team from the preseason? So yeah, but I will have, the hustle's going to be great. Chris Thurston is a assassin when it comes to football. So you definitely want to be, listening to what he says and watching his opinions for football. And we have a good time too. It's fun. So, we'll be on 6 p.m. Wednesdays. And I think we did a Saturday morning show last year. I'm hoping we add that back because that's always fun to sort of watch. And that's a great show. We will have it at some point. I don't know if we're going to come off the bat with it, but we basically just sit and watch the odds board and talk games in real time. So look for the Saturday morning show as well because that's a good one too.
Definitely check out the hustle. Definitely check out Adam on Wager Talk. He is on Twitter at TopFlightSI. Make sure you follow Chris Duke at HazmatSuit23. Circumcision was trending on Twitter earlier, so you may have some.
Adam, did you say you had one that you haven't shared yet that you wanted to share, or are you going to hold off?
No, like I said, the two things I bet so far in terms of preseason football stuff: Giants over 7 and Tennessee Vols over 7.5. Haven't gotten the window with anything else yet. But if I do, I don't sell those, so that those I just fire out on shows and tweet out, so everyone will know about it. I'll make sure that they get circulated on Twitter for sure.
I'm gonna go bet those right now. Two teams that last year struggled a little bit. Everyone wants to talk about the high octane Bamas and the Georgias and SEC. A little value on the Volunteers there.
Absolutely.
There you go. All right, next week we will have post-Vegas trip, the prop queen Ariel Epstein on next week. We have Adam pre-Vegas. We'll have Ariel next week. In the meantime, keep an eye out for another one of our NFL previews a little bit later this week. Follow all our stuff at Fade You Sports on Twitter. Chris, remind everybody what happens sometimes when you bet on poop.
You might step in it, but sometimes it'll smell like roses.